All right, guys, so welcome back to Operating Systems Basics. My name is Robert, and I'm one of the instructors for this course, as some of you guys know already. And after this long break that we had, we're just going to be starting things off with session 6. And today we're going to be talking about troubleshooting Windows right after the system has started up. Okay? But before we jump into the content, I just want to mention a few things here. So the first thing is, please guys verify the changes that were made to the subject guide, because I noticed a lot of you guys are trying to reach us, saying that you guys need more time to complete the assessments. And I'm pretty aware that the situations have been a little bit hard for you guys because of the COVID-19 crisis and things like that. So we actually made a few changes to the subject guide that's actually going to benefit you guys. So just take advantage of everything that we have changed into the subject guide. Um, Another thing is, for those of you guys that study with Teacher Ty, um, Teacher Ty is unwell at the moment, so he's not able to teach at the moment. He's actually in the hospital and he's gonna be away for a while. So alternatively, you guys can just reach me, myself, Robert Lagiano, or Daniel Gutierrez, who is the other teacher for this course as well. Okay? Uh, about the video lecture, guys. So because of this COVID-19 crisis and the shutdown on our campus, we're not able to do any course at CIT at the moment. So we're gonna be going with the online approach, and that's why you guys gonna be having the lectures recorded previously, and then you can take advantage of your regular class times in order for you to, make any question, and if you have any request, if you want to know anything about the course, anything about the content that you're not aware of, or any question you might encounter while you're doing the assessments, just reach Daniel and I, and we're gonna be happy to answer you guys. Another thing is, the easiest way to reach us would be through eLearn, because we basically use eLearn every day, so it's pretty easy. When you guys want to reach us on eLearn as well, you can also try to reach us on email as well. But feel free to reach us however you want to do it. All right, and let's get going, guys. So today's lecture, we're going to be talking about chapter 14, and I have divided this lecture in two parts. So we're going to have a little bit of a presentation, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about the theory behind what we're going to be studying. And the second part of this lecture will be a demonstration. So I'll take advantage of this recording in order for me to show you guys actually how you're going to be able to access the tools that are going to be listing here. And let's get going. So I want to start things off with this statement from Tim Daly, and he actually said, "I appreciate all the devices the Windows people are coming up with, but the operating system, I just want to smash it." And if you were a Windows user for a while right now, and if you have started using Windows since Windows XP, and you've been through Windows 7, Windows Vista, Windows 8, and whatever Windows version you encounter, sometimes the Windows operating system can be so tricky, and things can get really slow, and you just want to smash the computer. That's how things work. But the thing is, guys, this may not be always right. So sometimes the problem is not actually with the hardware, it's not actually with the software. The problem is not actually in the computer itself. Sometimes the problem is the person handling the keyboard and mouse. All right. So the thing is, using Windows can be a little bit tricky sometimes, guys, especially if you have no idea how to use the management tools that are available. And if you're not aware of the management tools, if you don't know how to use them, it's just like, owning a car and not taking the car to a service at all. And when you most need it, when you're just far away from home, your car breaks down in the middle of the road, and that is because you haven't serviced your car properly, you haven't got ready, you haven't changed the oil, you haven't observed the alerts and things like that. So with Windows is the same thing, guys. Windows may not be one of the most reliable OSs in the market right now, but its reliability is highly related to how and when and what are the things that you do in order to keep it well maintained. Okay, so our objectives today for this lecture will be explaining some of the tools that we have native to our operating system. We're going to be seeing which tools we're able to troubleshoot our applications and our hardware as well. We're going to be applying some of the best practices to troubleshoot our Windows related problems. We're also going to be troubleshooting problems with the slow startup and slow performance as well. We're going to be troubleshooting some application errors and crashes. We're also going to be learning how to remove some software and some applications that fail. Okay, and lastly but not least, we're going to be troubleshooting some hardware. We're going to see what are the most common problems and how we as technicians, how we as IT specialists are able to fix that. Okay, so let's learn a little bit about the booting system. As you guys know, when we talk about booting, this term refers to when you actually bring up your computer and your computer is at the working state. All right, there are actually two types of booting. We have what we call the hard boot or the cold boot, which is basically just using the on and off switch to turn on the machine. We also have the soft and warm boot, which is basically just using the OS to reboot. In Windows, we call that a restart. Okay, so every time I'm talking about a restart, it's actually just a soft or warm boot. And every time we're just talking about pressing the switch, the on and off button in your system, we're talking about a hard or cold boot. All right, let's just differentiate here the UEFI and the BIOS. Guys, the BIOS is just an older version of the UEFI. It doesn't have everything that the UEFI has to offer. And we pretty much say that the UEFI is a mini application. It's a mini operating system that allows you to control a whole bunch of functions from your motherboard and a whole bunch of functions in your system. So the UEFI is pretty much just the newest version of BIOS, and it offers you a whole bunch of new tools for you to configure your system. Once again, guys, in this chapter, we'll have a look at the tools that are available for us to troubleshoot right after the process of booting is complete. All right, so right after you see that your Windows operating system has taken control of your machine. Okay, let's just differentiate, guys, here what's the difference between shell and kernel, because this is extremely important for you to understand how you should troubleshoot your system. Okay, so when we talk about shell, shell is the portion of the OS that relates to the user itself. So as you guys can see here in the picture, we have the user, which is the person using the operating system, and whatever we have which is closest to the user in application related things, we call the shell. And everything that is behind the shell, which is basically controlling the hardware, we call kernel. All right, so the kernel is actually composed of the HAL, which is the hardware abstraction layer. So these is pretty much responsible for controlling your printer, your monitor, your mouse, your keyboard, everything that is hardware. Every hardware resource that you have in your system is controlled by the kernel. All right, and obviously some of the applications within the shell, they're able to communicate with the kernel, and then they're able to do whatever it is that you want to do with your hardware as well. All right. Within Windows, we have two types of configuration data. We have the registry, and we also have some configuration files for each one of the programs. All right. So as I mentioned here, shell operates in user mode, so it's closest to the user. Okay. The kernel has more power though, it controls the hardware. So the thing is, you got two main components in the kernel. Why is it important to know the difference between shell and kernel? Guys, the thing is, if you have an application that is controlling the kernel and it crashes, there is a very high chance that the system is not going to be able to recover. You're not going to be able to control your system anymore. So when your computer screen just crashes and you're not able to use the mouse, you're not able to use the keyboard in order to access any tool, that was actually a kernel fail. All right. And then you have to do a hard boot. You have to turn off your computer and then turn it back on, or restart the computer, or you need to restart the kernel. All right. However, when you got some applications that are running within the shell and they crash, sometimes you're just able to terminate them and your system is still going to be working. All right, it's still going to be in working state, and you're still going to be able to open some other applications as well. So let's talk a little bit about the user profile and the program files as well. So if you guys are not familiar with this, when you have user data, it's usually stored in your local disk drive. In my case, it's the C drive. And I have, within my users folder, I have Robert. So Robert is the name of the user that I have in my machine. So this is pretty much the folder that my user keeps all of the configuration files within. All right. We have the nt-user.dat, which is a hidden file stored within this folder, within the user folder, and it pretty much contains all the user settings within this machine. Okay. And each time a user signs in, all the contents within this file, they are copied to the local registry. Okay, in order to access the configuration for each one of the users. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the program files now. Okay, we talked about the user files, the user data. Let's talk a little bit about the program. So we have an operating system, and our operating system pretty much just need files to run programs. Okay, this is how it works. And they're usually stored within the local disk drive. In my case, once again, the C drive. Sometimes it could be E drive as well. It depends on which operating system version you're using. But usually it's the C drive. The letter C is assigned. So we have our local disk drive / program files. This is pretty much the folder that will contain all of the program files for 32-bit versions of Windows. Okay, if you're running a 64-bit version of Windows, you're also gonna have the x86 to identify these 32-bit programs. Okay, all the 64-bit versions and all the 64-bit programs, they're gonna be stored in the program files folder. All right. So once again, guys, just a reminder here, just if you have a hardware that is capable of installing a 64-bit version of the operating system, it's usually better and it's going to offer you better performance if you make sure you install the compatible version. So if you have a 64-bit machine, the best practice is installing a 64-bit operating system. And that is because a 32-bit operating system is not going to be able to access more than 4 gigabytes of RAM in your machine. So if you have an 8 gigabit of RAM or higher system and you install a 32-bit operating system, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to use all the resources that your machine has to offer, and that might slow down your operating system as a whole, and it might slow down all your programs, all your applications and things like that. All right. Folders for Windows data. We also have a database called registry, which keeps most of the hardware and software configuration information from Windows. It also stores user preferences and application settings, guys. So the registry is a pretty important part of the operating system as well. Some of the initialization files that Windows uses are also identified with .ini and .inf file extensions. So if you ever encounter a file like this, .ini, .inf, guys, just make sure you don't delete it, all right? Because they might be a very important initialization file for the operating system as a whole, and that might crash your operating system as well. So here are a few more Important folder locations that Windows stores some of the configuration files. We have our Windows System 32 config folder, which pretty much stores all the registry location files. We have the backup folder for these registry files. We have our fonts folder. So these \fonts folder within your local disk drive, and inside your Windows folder, it's going to identify all the fonts that you have in your system. We also have the temporary files folder within our Windows folder as well in our local disk drive. And we have some offline files that are used by our system as well. But how does our operating system actually manages our applications, guys? And what is actually a process? We need to understand that in order for us to be able to troubleshoot our system and in order for us to make sure our system is running optimally, okay? So the first thing is when an application is open, so every time you click in an application that might be Microsoft Office, Microsoft PowerPoint, or whatever, that program that is stored in your hard drive is copied to your memory, to your RAM. And every time that this happens, we call it a process. So a process is pretty much just a program that is already running, all right, within our shell, okay, within the shell. So when this program is running within the shell and is working with the system resources assigned to it, that's when we call it a process, okay? When a process makes a request to use a system resource, this request is made to the Windows 32 subsystem. So this application, this process, which is the running program, needs to talk to our Windows system in order to access all other resources in our system. All right, guys? So if we have a hard drive, for example, the hard drive is controlled by the kernel, okay? And our Win32 system has access and can communicate with the kernel, okay? And in order for us to print a job or print something, what we need to do is we actually need two threads, okay? These two threads, they will, one of them contact the hard drive to get the file, the other one will contact the printer and tell the printer to print that file specifically that was retrieved from the hard drive, okay? Because we're using here two threads, we call multi-threading, okay? So every time we need to access more than one resource within the kernel and we open a thread, when we have more than one thread, we call it a multi-threading process. All right, guys, so enough of this introduction. Let's talk a little bit about the tools themselves, okay? So these are the few tools that we have available, man. We have so many important tools available for us to recover our system. And, you know, let's be real. We have no idea what some of them do, but most of them are so helpful for us to troubleshoot our system. And they might help us so much to, you know, fix the issues that we're having and, you know, avoid slow processing times, avoid slow startup, and so on and so forth. Okay, and of course, if you have some skills with most of these, or at least one, three, four, five, six tools of these, man, you have a huge differential in the job market today because you basically need how to troubleshoot the basic things in your system. And that is a valuable tool to have, guys. So please, just if you have an issue, try to investigate it further. Try to use the admin tools in order to assist you with that. Okay? Let's see more details of each one of these tools, how we can use some of them in order to resolve some common issues. All right, so we have one of the famous ones is the control panel, guys. We have the control panel, which is just basically a whole bunch of small programs that will allow us to manage our Windows settings, okay? So basically in the control panel, we have option to configure a printer, we have option to configure the network and so on and so forth. So basically we have a whole bunch of small programs which we call applets that will allow us to manage our system, okay? We also have administrative tools which is going to offer a wide range of tools. However, make sure you have administrative privilege to access some of them. Um, Also, we have our computer management console, which also has a whole bunch of tools available for us to manage the system, the entire system, guys. We also have our Microsoft Management Console, allows us to build and customize a console. So if you have a whole bunch of tools that you always using to troubleshoot your system, you can configure your Microsoft Management Console to have those tools ready for you to access. All right. We also have our performance monitor tool, which pretty much just basically allows us to track the entire activity in our system and how the hardware and software are being used within our system. Some tracking tools, guys. These are so important tools that we have in our sleeves that help us so much to troubleshoot our system. We have our event viewer, which is pretty much just all of the records that your system have of log files. So just basically a log file is basically a message from your computer telling you that something went wrong or that something happened, and we're gonna see the details further down the class. And I'll actually show you guys some types of events that Windows registers and some types that you can analyze in order to troubleshoot your system. We have our performance monitor tool as well, which allows us to track the activity and measure performance in our system. This is very important, guys, this performance monitor, because it will allow you to actually analyze your hardware and make sure you actually need a hardware upgrade before you buy more RAM, before you get another hard drive, and things like that. So it will allow you to analyze your hardware and will allow you to compare with all the resources that you actually using. Okay. We also have a resource monitor as well. So the difference here between the performance monitor, the resource monitor will basically allows us to see those results. It will allows us to see graphs. It will allows us to save it and things like that. I'll show you guys later and you guys will have a better idea of what I'm talking about. Okay, those are the tracking tools we have available. We also have our task manager. So guys, the task manager is so friendly to use. So if you have no idea how to use task manager, if you've never used it before, it's the famous Control Alt Delete. So when you press Control Alt Delete in your system, you're basically gonna get that screen that looks like the log screen, and it's gonna tell you that you can access the task manager. When you click in Task Manager, you can actually see a whole bunch of things that are actually happening in your system in real time. You can see all the applications that are currently running. You can actually see if the application is responding, if the application has crashed, and thus is not responding. So you can, terminate that application. You can terminate that process to make sure your system has that resources available. We also have our system configuration, which is also known as msconfig, which allows us to enable and disable programs that launch during the startup process. So that's so helpful, guys, if you have too many programs in your system, if you have installed too many applications, too many programs, and you haven't checked your startup configuration to make sure that some of the applications that you don't need to be open at the startup process, they won't be started as long as you log into the machine. All right, that will speed up your login process. That will speed up your system as a whole, and is pretty useful. I will also show you guys how to deal with that in a minute. We also have a services console, which allows us to control our Windows and third-party services installed on our system as well. So, for example, if we have a Adobe Connect installed in our system. This Adobe Connect actually need a few services to be running in order for it to work. All right. So Adobe Connect, we use some of Windows services to communicate uh, through the internet and things like that. So you got to make sure that if you have installed a certain program, you actually have the services that that program needs in order to be functioning properly. All the problem solving tools that we have available, we have our troubleshooting. Troubleshooting is actually not that helpful sometimes because it's gonna try to look for common errors, and most of the time, I've never had a good experience using troubleshooting tools, the native ones that come with Windows. But I'll show you guys a few things later on as well. We have our group policy. Group policy are basically when you have a domain in your system. So when your machine is joined into a certain domain, it needs to retrieve some group policy from the domain in order to configure itself. That's pretty much it. However, if your computer is not connected to a domain, you can also adjust your system by going to your local group policy as well. Uh, and we also have the registry editor as well. Allows us to play with the registry as well. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about some hardware problems and how we can actually troubleshoot them. What are the tools that we have available for us to uh, verify what's going on in our hardware? All right. So we have our device manager, guys. So device manager is very useful when you have installed something in your system, something which is usually not plug and play, and your system is not recognizing that hardware. We use device manager in order to see that the system itself have identified the hardware. However, it doesn't know how to communicate with the hardware. When that happens, you actually get a question mark on top of the icon that you have your hardware. And what we do is we actually download the drives from the manufacturer, and then we make sure that hardware is going to be working. We also have print management where we can manage the print queues. We have our display applet where we can manage our display settings. We have a DX diag tool which allows us to change the configurations in our DirectX. So for those of you guys that don't play games that often, DirectX refers to the interface between video and sound and applications that use these devices. So DirectX is crucial for you that play a few games online and play a few games on your computer. So you basically need DirectX to work a few games as well. So you can troubleshoot your DirectX through the DX diag program. We also have a memory diagnostics tools, guys. These memory diagnostics tools is very important, guys. And I'm saying this because these memory diagnostic tools will allow you to analyze your system memory. It will allow you to actually run a diagnostic through your RAM, and it's gonna tell you if there's some issue with your RAM. It's gonna tell you if there are bad sectors in your RAM, and it's gonna allow you to make sure that your RAM is good uh, and is running properly. Okay. Display applet. We also have the display applet. Uh, we have the disk defragmented as well. For hard drive purposes, we can use both of these tools as well. We'll see a little bit further how we can use them. All right. Best practices for troubleshooting. Let's see a few steps that we can do in order to troubleshoot our system. First of them, we can interview the user and backup data. So if you're a technician or even if you're assisting someone in the company that you work for, and even someone in your family that wants some help with the operating system, the first thing you need to do is you actually need to interview the user, and you got to make sure you do the backup on the user data. Because if you have to do any changes, guys, if you have to reinstall the operating system, you got to make sure you have backed up the data. Otherwise, your customer or your a friend or your family member will be very upset if they find out you fixed the operating system issue. However, you lost all of their data. So make sure you make the backup. Use an external hard disk drive or something else, or even the cloud solutions to back up the data that you have in your system. Ask the user to reproduce the problem. So ask them to try to reproduce the issue that they're having in front of you so that you can have a better idea of what's going on. And of course, try to reboot the machine. Sometimes the machine has just installed an update and the user hasn't rebooted the system, and it was supposed to restart the system as soon as the installation was finished. And in order for the system to function properly, you need to reboot the system as well. So just try to reboot the system and see if it works. Try to restart the machine, and if it works, congratulations, you have troubleshooted the system successfully. If it didn't work, move on to step number 2. In step number 2, what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna try to see if the computer has actually tried to tell us something. And the most important thing that you can do is actually try to see the logs that the computer has saved. And in order to do that, you actually need to open Event Viewer. So when you open Event Viewer, you're actually going to see all the system messages. You have security-related messages, which we call logs. We have the configuration logs. We have setup logs, a lot of logs. So everything that's going on in your system, information logs, if you have installed something successfully, the system is going to generate a log and it's going to be there. Security logs, for example, if someone has tried to access the computer and has tried to log into the system and the password was wrong and the person was actually trying a few times, these will be all saved in your logs. Okay, guys? So make sure you know how to open Event Viewer. Make sure you know how to understand all the logs that you have available in Event Viewer as well. All right. Next, try the automatic troubleshooting applet. The one I'm going to show you guys as well how to use it is the native one that comes into your Windows system. Sometimes might be helpful, sometimes not. It's usually helpful when you have internet connection, guys, because it's actually going to try to check online if that is a common issue, and it's going to try to apply some of the practices on the database. So the thing is, make sure you have internet connection before you do the troubleshooting applet as well. Next step, step number 3, if everything that you have done so far, you haven't recognized your system error or application error. So the third step is we need to consider the data or application might be corrupted. So sometimes you have installed an application, you have installed a program, and the file that you have actually downloaded, the installation file might be corrupted. And when after your installation is completed, you have actually installed a corrupted program. All right, or even if the program was actually updating, and before it actually finished updating, you actually restarted your machine, or let's say blackout happened and you lost power to your system. What happens is the application might just get corrupted. And what do you have to do in order to solve that? You can actually try to repair the application, or you can try to reinstall the application as well. So just make sure you try to repair first. If it's able to repair, it's just going to repair the application and things are going to go smooth. However, if the repair doesn't work, you can just try the second approach, which is just basically uninstalling and reinstalling the application. If everything you have done so far hasn't worked, there might be an issue that was caused by a virus or malware. So the thing is, there might be a virus. So make sure your antivirus is active. Make sure your antivirus is up to date. Make sure you have an anti-malware and everything is working and everything is active. Okay. We're going to see more details on that when we get to chapter 17 as well. You can also have a look at chapter 17, see some of the options we have for antiviruses and anti-malwares. Alright guys, so after we've done all of these steps, let's talk a little bit about some common problems that we have in our system, okay? Usually when we have some faulty memory, we can solve that by just going to our memory diagnostic tools. So when you open memory diagnostic tools, as I'm going to show you guys later, it's just basically going to run, it's going to ask you to restart the machine, okay? And it's actually not going to boot into the OS, okay? It's just going to boot into a blue screen, and then it's just going to run a whole bunch of read and write tests into your RAM. And after it's finished, it's actually going to restart the machine again. It's going to boot the machine. It's going to get inside your operating system. And after you are inside, you can just go to Event Viewer and check the event logs that were generated by your memory diagnostic tools. Okay, it's funny because I actually had built a custom computer last year, and I had bought 2 RAM modules. I have installed into my system. I have installed the operating system, and I was actually getting many blue screen of deaths. The screen that tells you that something's wrong with your system and that the system has crashed. Uh, and what I did was I actually ran the memory diagnostic tools and I checked the event logs. And to my surprise, there was actually bad sectors in my RAM. So I had to take all of my RAM modules to the computer parts store, and I had to ask them to replace the parts. They obviously ran the same test, and then they were able to determine that there was actually an issue with the one of the RAM modules. Okay, and I was then able to get a new one. All right. And what we do when we have a corrupted hard drive. Okay, guys, when you have a corrupted hard drive, the easiest way for you to check your hard drive, that you can check your sectors, the bad sectors in your hard drive, and that you can check your hard drive as a whole, is by using the check disk command. So if you open your command line with administrative privileges and you run the command check disk, you're actually going to be checking your hard disk drive for errors. Okay, that's once again, guys, that's really important. When I was back in the day when I was working as a computer technician, I actually had to troubleshoot many laptops that weren't able to boot the operating system, and I couldn't even run the check disk command because the machine wasn't actually getting inside of Windows in the first place. So what I had to do is I actually had to take the computer apart. I replaced the hard drive, and later on I actually found out when I tried to reinstall the operating system within that hard drive that the hard drive had actually had the MBR partition, which stores the booting configuration files, was actually corrupted. So when you have a hard disk drive that's got the MBR sector corrupted, there is nothing that you can do in order to install the operating system within that hard drive. However, you can still use that hard drive because the other sectors of the hard drive, they're still good. So you can actually just take that hard drive that you're not able to install the operating system anymore. You can just put it into an external case and then make an external hard drive. You're still going to be able to save files on it. You're just not going to be able to boot the operating system. So this is once again, guys, a very common error that occurs when you have a laptop that is not being able to boot into the operating system. Sometimes just replacing the hard drive is a good solution. Low on system resources. So once again, guys, if you use the famous Control-Alt-Delete and you access the task manager, again, another way to access the task manager straight away, Control-Shift-Esc. That's really nice command. That's really nice shortcut, guys, because every time I press Control-Alt-Delete, I'm only interested in accessing Task Manager. So I always have to press Control-Alt-Delete and then click into Task Manager. However, if you want to open Task Manager straight away, you can just use Control-Shift-Esc. And that is amazing because you just get straight to the point. You get just straight to where you want it to be. You want to check the applications. You want to check the processes. You just use the Control-Shift-Esc. It's a very useful shortcut. Sometimes we might also encounter incompatible third-party applications as well, guys. And that in order to fix that, we can actually open msconfig as well to configure the startup application. So I have mentioned this before. You can just disable some of the applications that are starting with the operating system, and that is actually going to save you a whole bunch of system resources, and that's going to allow you to have a little bit more resources for the startup process, and that's going to speed up your startup process. All right, guys. Some common problems continue. We have a few things more. If you have come this far and you still haven't solved the issue, try the system file check in order for you to scan all the system configuration files. Alternatively, you can use the dim command as well. Particularly, I prefer to use the sfc scan now command because it's actually easier to remember as well. You need to make sure your system is up to date as well, guys. Make sure you have the latest drives. Make sure you have the latest patches. Make sure you have uh, uh, the latest software. Try booting to safe mode as well. If your system is still not being able to boot, try to boot into safe mode. See if that works fine. Try to restore the system if you have a restore point available. So that's why it's so important, guys, for you to make some restore points automatically. If you haven't done it in your system, I strongly recommend you doing some restore points, especially before you install some applications, because some applications may actually corrupt your system. And if you have a restore point available, you can actually get back to the restore point before the installation to make sure your system is going to be working. I have slow startup. What should I do? Guys, this is a very common issue. Okay, the first step is observe the startup. Sometimes you have just installed so many applications, you have installed so many programs in your system, and the thing is, it's just using too much resources from your system to start up. Okay, especially if you're not using an SSD, guys. These standard hard drives, they're not fast at all. Okay, so if you're opening too many applications when your system is starting up, it's gonna be so slow. Okay, so in order to fix that, make sure you have disabled the applications to start up with Windows. Just make sure you have selected only the ones that you are sure you're gonna be using when your system starts up. Make sure you back up user data first before you do that. Perform some routine maintenance, guys. Once again, use the tools that I have listed. Investigate and eliminate startup programs. That's what I have just mentioned. Check for unwanted scheduled tests. Now, there's another one, guys, because some systems they have actually scheduled tests. Okay, so if you have an update scheduled to happen every single day on a specific time that you're using your system is going to be using resources that are going to be helpful. So if these resources are being used and you're not even using the task, it might be a good idea if you just disable that task to happen at that time and you just postpone it. All right. So these are the few steps that you can do in order to fix some slow startup. All right. And that is the end, guys. The end of session 6. I've actually talked too much already. We have talked for 45 minutes straight. Wow, that's a lot, guys. Okay, so this is the end of session 6, guys. Please, once again, refer to eLearn for these session activities. Read chapter 14 from the book, guys. Once again, this lecture, it doesn't cover everything from the book. The book has actually a few more details on how to troubleshoot a few more issues that you have in your system, and I strongly advise you guys have a look at the book as well. Have a look at chapter 14 because it's really important if you want to troubleshoot computers, or even if you're looking for a job in help as a help desk technician, help desk support. I strongly recommend you to understand how you can actually troubleshoot your entire system. Okay. This is the end of the lecture, guys. However, I'm also going to be posting another video actually showing you guys how to open these applications, some of them, how to play with some of them as well. I'll explain what are the resources that we have available. Okay, so make sure you watch the next video as well, guys. Take care, and I'll see you soon. And if you have some questions in regards to the content of this course, if you have some questions in regards to this lecture, make sure you contact me or you contact Daniel, and everything will be fine. Just take this time, guys, that you're working from home to read through the chapters, to do the pracs, and yes, make sure you take care of yourselves. Okay? I'll see you soon. Bye.